Hi everyone, and welcome to episode 7 of Programming Thor with Grant. In this episode I want to build up a sort of what I call a universal patch. Now that's going to be quite a simple, basically an analogue polysynth. It's going to be quite similar in architecture to something you'd have expected to see in the early 80s, something like a Roland Juno 6 or something along those lines. But what I want to do is demonstrate just how versatile such a seemingly simple machine can be. So let's just get straight down to constructing it. So bring Thor into the rack, and as usual show the programmer and initialize by resetting the device. Now I'm going to increase the polyphony to 12 and increase the release polyphony to 12. You don't have to really worry about what that means at the moment. Basically you can have up to 12 notes polyphonic, all sounding simultaneously. We're going to keep the analog oscillator just as we did before. So full keyboard tracking, octave we can change as we see fit. The waveform selection we can change as we desire. Semitone, we're just going to keep that at 0, and fine tune, just keep that at 0. Low pass filter, the frequency, cutoff frequency knob, we're just going to make that variable depending on what application you want to have. We're going to completely take away velocity because a lot of these early synths, especially the cheaper ones, didn't have velocity sensitivity back in the 80s, but you could still get a lot of expression by thinking about how the filter envelope and the amplitude envelope all work along with your playing style, and by use of the mod wheel and such like. You can actually get a lot of expression. You don't need velocity or aftertouch or any of these things. We're going to keep it on 24 decibel per octave type 2, keep the self oscillation box checked. Keyboard, I'm going to put up to full keyboard tracking, and the envelope, again, the envelope depth is something that you just change depending on what sound you're trying to achieve. We're not going to use the sound shaper, we're not going to touch the mixer because we only have one oscillator coming into the one filter. We're going to use LFO1 as purely dedicated to being the vibrato oscillator. So I'll enable that through the modulation matrix. So we get LFO1 as a source, goes to destination oscillator 1 pitch, and we'll give it about 31. That's a fairly decent amount, and because we're scaling it by the mod wheel, that means we can have up to 31 depth of modulation when the mod wheel is at its highest position, when it's up there, and 0 modulation when it's down there. I'm going to bring in LFO2. Now I'm going to give you the ability to modulate one or both of two destinations. So we get LFO2 and we allow you to use that as a destination to the frequency of filter 1, and I'll just let you hear what that sounds like in practice. So just take out the envelope completely, and let's have a look at the rate here. we'll take down the rate so that it's less than 1 Hertz, and if we start increasing the intensity here, so you can hear it's actually opening and closing the filter in a cyclic way. And we can change the rate as we see fit, make it slower or faster. And we can change the wave shape. I'll just put it back to a sine wave and turn the rate down and turn the intensity down. So that's a possibility. You can use LFO2 to change the filter frequency in a rhythmical fashion, and we'll also make LFO2 available to perform pulse width modulation on oscillator 1. So again, if we select the there's the pulse wave, we'll just put it to the central position, the square shape. And if we introduce pulse width modulation, and sometimes it's nice to have the envelope for the filter available in a reverse direction, so that it starts off bright, and as it goes through the decay, as it goes through the attack phase, it actually drops in frequency. So if we get the filter envelope and we send that to the filter frequency, but go into negative modulation, so that's quite slow. So if we make the initial decay quite fast, so that's an option, as well as having the positive filter modulation via the filter envelope. We can also have it in a negative direction. So the analog oscillator, you can switch between the 4 different waveform outputs as you see fit, and you can apply pulse width modulation if you want to any depth or rate. And I think the last thing that we want to do, we could also provide pulse width modulation by this modulation envelope, so that instead of being a cyclic pulse width modulation, it actually occurs over the course of each note. So I'll just demonstrate what that sounds like. So if we take the modulation envelope and we patch it into oscillator 1 pulse width, and we give it some intensity, We'll take away the cyclic one. So you can hear that it's going from a very narrow pulse through to a more square shape every time you press a key. And we'll just take that back down to 0. And that's pretty much it. So this seemingly simple setup gives you a huge range of sound options, and one feature that early 80s polysynths had, in order to make up for the fact that they only had one oscillator per voice, was that they would give it a chorus unit. So if I give it a rate about there and amount about there, so if we just so that's your plain polysynth sound. Now it's sounding quite nice as it is, but if we just bring in the chorus, it puts it onto a completely different planet. So you can just have chorus on or off, and if you want to mess about with the rate and amount knobs, you can get all sorts of nice effects out of that. And what you might also want to do is cheating a bit, but if you bring in some luxurious reverb, so we'll just save that patch as it is, and we'll call it Universal Simple Polysynth, and save that. So I'm going to leave it for just now. There are loads of parameters that you can play about with, which will give you all sorts of different effects, and it's remarkable, as I say, just how versatile a setup this can be, even though it's only one analogue oscillator which has only 4 different waveforms available to it, one low pass ladder filter which is fixed on the 24 decibel per octave setting, and you've got 2 envelope generators and 2 LFOs and a chorus unit, and it just makes some fantastic noises. But I think that's quite enough for this episode, and what I'm intending to do in the next episode is just demonstrate the range of sounds that can be obtained from this seemingly simple setup. So I think that about wraps it up for this episode. So thanks for tuning in, and I'll hopefully see you next time.